Yeah, that's the story so far. Now, it's time for us to talk about the worrying issues of the threat of terrorism, which have been heightened over recent days because of a report that we've received from Axis. It's a group that has been monitoring this sort of situation, and they report that an organization, a terror organization in Burkina Faso has set its eyes on Ghana and other West African countries as targets, particularly churches and public gatherings. The Ghana Refugee Board, by the way, says that it is ready to carry out their own assessment of some 300 Burkina Faso nationals who crossed the border into Ghana, and they will do this once they are notified. The Burkinabes have so far told Ghanaian officials that they're fleeing from a terrorist group. There have been a series of attacks in Burkina Faso, forcing Ghana security agencies to be on high alert amidst concerns that the country could also be hit. I don't know if it's fair for me to say it has forced Ghana security agencies to be on high alert, because we don't know whether they're on high alert or not. But the country could also be hit. That is a fact. MCE for Sisala East Municipal Assembly, Karimu Nayo, tells JoyNews that the decision to classify them as asylum seekers or refugees will be taken after some profiling is done. This is all to lead to an important conversation here. The Ghana Refugee Board says that they are yet to be informed, they are yet to be activated in this area. So let's hear what he had to say, and then we'll focus on the security issues with our guest.
The immigration is there profiling them. The instruction that is to go and register them. We know the number, and then possibly we'll take the next step.
But what more information have you picked from them in terms of their real intention?
Oh, the real intention is just to do farming, because according to them, they are farmers and where they are coming from. But because there's no peace in that area, they cannot settle there and do farming. So they are now looking for a conducive environment where their lives will be safe, and then they can also do their economic activity as farming.
Right. Now, our guest in the studio to help us understand the dynamics of what's going on and whether or not we're safe is Dr. Festus Kofi Orbin. He's a research fellow at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. This is what he does for a living, and we're hoping to benefit from his expertise today. Dr. Orbin, how nice to see you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Indeed. Now, the warnings from Axis were made public, even though Axis themselves insist that that was not their intention. They didn't want to inform the whole country that there was a threat. They just wanted the relevant stakeholders to be aware. Now, it seems as if as a nation, we kind of, as individuals, we expect that our security will be provided by the state. And we don't really need to know how they do it. We don't want to know how they do it. We just want to believe, as we go about our day, that things have been done to keep us safe. But we know that 300 people, at least, have come through over our border without our immigration people knowing about it. They've gathered themselves somewhere in Sisala and said, we are settling, we are running from terrorists. We know that when we did a simulation recently, Ghanaians in a public place had no sense of awareness of strange packages, strange behavior, the things that other countries depend on to thwart terror attacks. We know these things. So from where you sit, is the average Ghanaian right to believe that we're protected, we're fine, state is taking care of us, or are we massively exposed?
First of all, thank you very much, and good morning to your viewers. I mean, if you look at what is going on and the vulnerabilities around the country, I mean, you just mentioned about the issue about what is going on across our borders. And if you listen to them very carefully, until this investigation was carried out, nobody even knew their presence in those places.
Yeah.
That is one. What happened recently at the Music Awards.
Yeah.
And some of the things that have happened over the years point to the fact that as a country, we are very vulnerable. Though the security agencies are doing what they can to prevent any possible attacks, the vulnerability is clear. and it's all over, I mean, the country. And what you just reported about is just a symptom of what the challenge that as a country that we face. Now, if you look at the video that we just showed, the migrants were saying that they are coming for economic reason. Though people have said that they are coming for, they are fleeing from the terrorist act. But if you listen to the farmers, they said what? We are coming to farm. And those people don't qualify to be refugees. They're economic, I mean, migrants. And when they came, nobody even got to know about it. You know, that shows how fragile our borders are. And there are so many, most of our border areas lack state presence. And in most cases, this is where the terror groups exploit. You look at Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, where they are operating now. Most of these places lack state presence and authority. And that is where they begin to take root. And if you look at how they also operate, first of all, there are some of them, they need to have a place of abode before they now begin to expand. So all these intel about planning to attack churches sometimes can be a diversionary tactic, because they divert your attention to these issues and then they focus on the real issues of capturing those vulnerable places in the country. So whilst we are also taking measures to protect our churches and everything, we also need to deal with the real issues, which, I mean, we can discuss as we move along.
I think we ought to. And for me, you mentioned the VGMAs and what happened there as another example of a very lax security.
Yeah.
But something occurred to me. The threat that is the most recent threat that we are all supposed to be responding to is from the, I think they're called Salafi jihadists.
Jihadists, yeah.
Now, their philosophy is that they are against secularism. It's not that they are against Christians, because in fact they have even attacked some Muslims that they thought were too secular.
Infidels.
Indeed, sorry. So they're against Wiasesem, if you will.
Western culture and all that.
Yes. So if indeed there was an imminent threat, the BGMAs, would that not have been a very attractive target to a group like Salafi jihadists?
Okay, so if you look at their targets, one of the things that they abhor is Western, I mean, culture, and the intention of their attack is also to create fear and panic, and any possible areas where they can gain publicity for whatever attack that they undertake. So the VGMA awards could have been a potential, I mean, target for these groups, because one of the intentions of the attacks is mostly to create publicity and attention for the attacks that they undertake. But having said that, you know, there are a lot of possible places where if these groups want to attack, they will. Now we are talking about churches, but in Mali, in Niger, they've attacked mosques. They've attacked schools. They have attacked places of worship and all that. They've attacked in Burkina Faso right now, the mining sectors. That is one of the places where these attacks are ongoing, because one, it gives them a source of revenue, and then two, it's an opportunity for them to recruit a lot of people, because like how we are dealing with illegal mining in Ghana, there are a lot of the youth that depend on that. They are disgruntled. They need a source of living. These people come in and present themselves as alternative to government, you know, and they are able to win the heart and minds of these people and use them for their activities. So beyond the ceremony, there are a lot of potential target areas that we have to be looking at, and not only churches.
I'm glad you mentioned that. So we need to really broaden the spectrum there.
Yes, and if you look at how they operate, most of the time they want to divert attention. Now, if you look at our border areas, you also see a lot of insecurity caused by intercommunal violence. In Burkina Faso, the political crisis that went on after the fall of Blaise Compaoré and the subsequent coup d'etats and whatever is what facilitated their roots in the north. And now we have a lot of insecurity across our borders. And those are the places we should be looking at. Whilst we also talk about the churches and the other places.
Now, the reason why I mentioned the VGMA is because, well, first of all, it's so topical, but also because, I mean, there were security officers there. We saw soldiers, police officers come up onto the stage when all of the disturbance was happening. So I want to borrow your expertise in this area. If indeed it is reasonable to have expected the VGMAs to have been a potential target, what should national security have done in terms of paying some attention to it? I mean, I know they have a building right behind the national the Accra International Conference Center where the dome was built for the event. What sort of attention should have been paid to it? Do you see from the evidence we have before us that any such attention was paid or not?
I mean, if you look at, Stoneboy even having the gun inside the dome, you could see that there were security lapses. I know the national security does a lot of undercover operations. There might be national security personnel there, but even that, you see, when we are talking about terrorism, it's not every security officer who is trained about how these groups operate. So there might be something I will see, and I will know that this will give me an indication of a possible terrorist threat or surveillance. But somebody who is a police officer or whatever might not be able to see that. So it goes beyond having national security personnel in these places to the kind of training they've been provided in terms of responding to some of these threats. Now, if proper security was there, I don't think he will be able to take the gun in there. So clearly there was a security lapse, and I think that should help in future organization of such programs. And also, I know during this event, most of the time the organizers also invite the police and all that. So most of the time, the security arrangements are made based on the kind of arrangement that are made. And so possibly, it could be that we never thought that this will happen, or it could be a potential terrorist threat. And so what has happened is also something to teach us that in future events or similar events like that, we need to put in place mechanisms beyond the program itself to look at these potential threats.
Let's talk about the migrant situation again. 300 reported in this story, but I know that the Ghana News Agency has a report that says that they have tracked over 1,000 of these migrants coming through the borders. Can you quantify for us the risk of such large numbers coming through undetected and for that reason not monitored once they are within our borders? Can you explain to us what this means in terms of security, and actually what it means in terms of the ability of our security agencies?
First of all, I want to look at the dynamics within our borders. Most of the borders that we have are artificial boundaries. And you have some ethnic groups that belong to both sides, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Togo, and all that. And so And most of these places also lack state presence.
Yeah.
By state presence, I mean the security, immigration, and all that.
Yeah.
And so these things have been ongoing for years. It's because now we have heightened insecurity in our neighboring country. That is why we become aware of some of these influx of a lot of people. But it's been going for a very long time. So even the numbers that have been provided by the Ghana News Agency might even be small, because there are a lot of them that come undetected from unapproved route and all that. And with the video that you showed, you see that the state agencies were not even aware.
Yeah.
You know, so the figures might be more or less, because these influx of migrants have been ongoing for so many years in the country. Now, in terms of the security risk posed by this is not only about the influx of terrorist groups. When they come to those communities, the receiving communities, they put pressure on the already limited social amenities in those villages. Now, if you look at what you also presented, you will see that there are land boundary issues that are also cropping up, because when these migrants grow their crops, they pay royalties to these local landlords. So it also creates kind of intra-communal tensions among the people themselves, and also conflict between the receiving communities and the migrants, because some of them come and then they take over their farmlands and everything, and that also creates a lot of tension. Influx of arms is also one major issue that comes with these illegal migration of people, because like we are saying, if when they came to those areas, they came with them with some arms and all that. Who will know where these arms are? What kind of arms did they come in with? You know, and there's a lot of organized crime, criminal activities that accompany some of these influx of migrants from other neighboring, countries. So the security risks go beyond the issue of terrorism to include these intercommunal violence and clashes and all that, and small arms proliferation, and also criminal activities and all that. I remember there was a time one of your colleagues did, I think Kwetenate, he did some work at Dollar Power
the mining
community. And you could see that there was no state presence in those places.
Yeah.
And those places have been taken over by criminal elements who are providing protection to these mining companies. So those are some of the security risks that it poses to Ghana as a country. And I think it is time we need to pay particular attention to our border communities.
Now, while all this is happening, people are legally importing thousands of weapons, ostensibly to be used by people in the mining sector for protection and so forth. Is there I know that there is a lot of political talk here. All of a sudden, a matter that is a national issue has been adopted by the two political sides, and they're throwing mud at each other. But I'm still interested in the security of the Ghanaian. Is this a threat to our security? Even though it's coming in legally, it clearly means that this dealer has an increased demand for weapons. What does this mean for the safety of you and I?
It's quite worrisome. I mean, if you look at the heightened security in the country and also within our neighboring countries, and then you see the influx of these arms and all that, I may give us a cause to, worry. One would have thought that with the increasing threats that we face, and also the issues that are ongoing in the mining sector with this government, Operation Vanguard and all that, at least we'll place a ban on the importation of arms for now, like President Mills did when he was in office. And like I told you earlier on, one of the targets of these terrorist groups is also these mining areas. And already you have explosives that can be used to manufacture IEDs. And then you are adding guns to it. So the things that they need to operate are already accessible and available in these mining areas. I think if there's any threat in the mining sector, the state agencies should be the first responders to that. It is not up to the mining companies to protect themselves unless there's a reasonable doubt that the state is unable to perform that function. So I would have thought that at least with what is happening within the country, there should be a ban on the importation of arms for a while until the threat level, is minimized within the country.
Okay, now let's talk about personal safety here, and even the perception of personal safety. I want you to have a look at what we learned when we went to Accra Mall, just to see whether people would notice suspicious behavior or odd packages and how they would react to it. Let's have a quick look at that. So we have left the backpack there for over 30 minutes and nobody has raised a single alarm. The people who are sitting on the bench have changed over time. Only one person has remained there, sitting right next to the bag. But he hasn't even noticed it's there, right beneath his feet. It could be a bomb, it could be anything. But he most certainly is not bothered. And neither is anyone else. I don't know whether there's CCTV in this shopping center, but nobody has picked up the fact that I left the bag there for 30 minutes. All right, I'll go take my bag. So I picked up my bag, and I was telling you earlier that I asked those sitting on the bench whether they had seen the bag there. They all said no. They didn't want to speak on camera for different reasons. But one of them, when I asked if he would speak on camera, he said no, because he's a member of national security. He was sitting right next to the bag. Now, when we put out the video, there was a very interesting reaction from the people of Ghana. So many of them, an overwhelming majority of them, were upset with us for putting out the video. They said that we are exposing our weakness to terrorists. So somehow, in their minds, we were safe because terrorists didn't know how lax we were or how how poor our security consciousness was. So that kept us safe because nobody knew. So now that they know, we are in danger. It's interesting. It seems that the average Ghanaian expects security to be provided for him without his participation. Talk to me about that. Is that something that we can even change? First of all, am I right in assessing that that's how Ghanaians think? And is this something that can be changed?
Yeah. You are, to some extent, you are right with what you are saying, but you need to take it from the historical point of view of how our security architecture has evolved. And if you trace it from colonialism, you see that the colonial powers used our security agencies for regime security. Yeah. After colonialism, the post-independent government also did the same thing, continue without a change. So over time, you've seen that people don't see the police. Like the police say you are a friend and whatever. People don't see the police as their friend. And you pick this up when you go to some part of the north and all that. And so that collaborative effort that the police is supposed to have for the citizens to prevent crime and all that is not there. It is now that through community policing and all that, the police is trying to let the citizens know their role in terms of providing their own security. But that is also not too effective. And that is why, in terms of the citizens' role in providing security, it's not something that the average Ghanaian has paid attention to. And I was not surprised about what you found at the Accra Mall, because people really don't care about what happens around them. You know, I remember there was a time a colleague of mine went to Equatorial Guinea, and when he came back, he said almost everybody there is kind of an intelligence person, because they are watching everybody's movement. And when they are suspicious of you, they will report to the authority. And it's because of how they've been conscientized by the state. But in our case, a lot of citizens think that everything should be done by the police. But you see, if you look at the structure of our police, for example, now if you look at where they are lodged, their barracks, they are far from the community. It's just few police officers that you find within the communities. So if something is happening in the community and the police is not told, or they don't know about it, I mean, they can't act, you know. So people have not really come to terms with the fact that they need to help the police for the police to perform its task. And it's also because of the relationship that has existed between the police and the citizen. How do people see the police? Do they see them as collaborators, or they see the police as a kind of people who are ready to humiliate them or whatever at any least opportunity? You know, so we need to look at the historical trend of how this has evolved and see how we can best change that through this community policing system that the police was implementing some time ago.
Wow. So who should make the first move? I mean, who should take that first step in creating a partnership between the people and the security agencies?
I think, first of all, the security agencies, they need to make that move. And civil society and the media will come and then provide that needed support. Because they know the areas of interest that they want the public to help them with, especially in intelligence gathering, and also alerting them of any suspicious activities and all that. So the police need to make that first move. And that is why I think the introduction of this community policing, where there were people within the community the police had trained to provide them with information, was really working in some communities, but it is not decentralized across the country, you know. So that has not been so effective, and I think we need to, moving forward, looking at the nature of our threats. Our threats are mostly coming from the people and not states. You see, the threat to Ghana is not Togo coming to attack Ghana, or Burkina Faso coming to attack Ghana, but our own people, internal people, you know. So we need to also look at how we define security. Now the attention is on human security, but it appears that we still think of security as a national security, and so the citizen is not supposed to know this or know that. But if the citizens are ignorant, that is where the criminal element also take advantage of to pursue their goals and all that.
Let's put that in perspective. I did a bit of research. I learned that since 9/11, and I was reading a report that was published in 2015, so it's 3 years ago, well, 4 years ago now. But as at the time the report was written in 2015, there had been 93 terror attempts that had been thwarted by the authorities since 9/11.
Okay.
So in a 14-year period, 93. And each and every one of them had one thing in common. It was thwarted because somebody noticed something. Somebody outside the security apparatus, a member of the public, noticed something. So a member of the public noticed that, oh, this person only comes out of the house at night, makes a phone call. Oh, I don't understand why my neighbor only comes out at night.
Yeah.
So they start surveilling them. They surveil them and realize they are connected to some terror group, and then they are able to thwart an attack.
Yeah.
Or somebody notices the little things that don't fit are noticed and reported.
Yeah.
So 93 potential catastrophes. I mean, can you imagine the number of lives that have been saved just because somebody noticed something? Somebody noticed something.
Yeah.
So how do we, if the security agencies are not willing to make a move, who can step in to start educating the public on their responsibility to be vigilant? Could organizations like yours take up that mantle? You train people in security issues.
Yes, I think it's a collective responsibility, and my institution has a role to play. But of course, we are also under the Ministry of Defense, so we have a role to play. But also civil society organizations and the media, especially, like what we are doing, it's a form of education as well. Yeah. You know, so I wouldn't say it is any particular organization. It's a collective, responsibility that we need to take, and also educating ourselves, the civil society and the other academic institutions and all that, because it is not every civil society organization that is focused in this area, and it's not every media organization or host who understands these issues. So when there's collaborative effort between, for example, media, academia, or civil society, we can together, educate the public more about these threats that confront us to take those measures. You know, the terrorism they have what we call a planning cycle, and before they carry out their attack, they do a lot of planning.
Forgive me, I'm told by my producer I have to cut in because we have a live event going on. But I've got to thank you, Dr. Festus Orbin from the Kofi Annan Institute of
Peacekeeping Training.
Peacekeeping Training. Thank you so much for your time with us.